What's up? What's up? Today is June 16th.
And it's
20.
my anniversary, Josh. It's my
Oh,
anniversary. So I'm to give the audience an idea of how old I am. It's my 31st
hey.
marriage anniversary. So
Yeah,
thank you for
everybody
having
clap
me. Thank
up.
you for having me.
Yeah, it's a
And
special day.
well, it's your anniversary too, right? You're putting out this podcast. So it's the
Yes,
first
yes.
anniversary of your podcast.
This is the inaugural podcast episode number one of Break Into the Future. Specifically for this episode, Breaking the Crypto. And so Breaking the Future is really all about everything in the future for the next 10, 20 years. So we're talking cryptocurrencies, blockchain, electric vehicles, solar, cannabis, psychedelics, AI, robotics, IoT, anything you could think about what's going to happen in the future. It will be hosted here. Joshua Taylor, your boy. We got Greg Foss. Tell everybody who you are, where you came from, where you're going, where you're at. Break it down.
Okay. Well, firstly, I just want to thank you again for having me. I am a Canadian. You'll see that in my accent and in the number of Canadianisms I throw in my talks. But so I grew up in Montreal, and I was an engineer. That's pretty important because I rely highly on mathematics. I went to McGill University in Montreal as an engineer, but like yourself, I wasn't actually at school to be an engineer as much as I actually played some sports there too. And I realized very quickly I didn't really want to be an engineer, but I said I don't really know what I want to be. I mean, you're 20 something years old or 19 years old, and I said I might as well stay in engineering. I like the mathematics, I like the challenge of it, but if I eventually want to go to business, that's fine. But the reality is you can't go from business back to engineering in school. You basically have to start right over, but you can always go from engineering and transfer some of your credits over to the business thing. So I said, I'll go that route. And for 4 years, I basically said, I know I don't want to be an engineer, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to stick it out. And then in my fourth year, I realized, okay, I'm going to do this business school option. And I applied to one business school in the US because I was only able to afford to apply to one. And it turned out to be Cornell University. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, just to understand the difference between the two countries. Firstly, I got to live with six guys that were still in undergrad, but the common thread there was we both were in respective fraternities. I was at McGill, and I had visited them, and they said, yeah, we'd have a ball. We have a place to one room to stay. Come and live with us. So it was the perfect integration because I was younger than most of the business school. Well, all of the business school applicants, actually, because I never would have gotten into Cornell if I was a US citizen. I had the marks, but I didn't have the work experience. But the reality was they were trying to build a international business program. And well, here's this clown from Canada. He's international. He has good good enough marks. But anyway, I got in, and I was so everything happens for a reason. I'm very spiritual, but I live with these undergrad kids. So the beautiful thing was I got to hang out with the undergrads for the nightlife or the student life, and then I worked hard in the business school and met a ton of really great people in the business school too. And I will say, as an aside, look, I've lived the U.S. experience in you think the two countries are very similar, but they're not. There's very distinct cultural differences. The U.S., I always loved it as the strongest and most powerful nation in the world. And I still believe that. But at the time, I just took an extra special interest in that because, these kids that I was going to school with were unbelievably smart. And anyway, as an aside, one of my roommates, unfortunately, was killed on 9/11. So I lived that side of the U.S. experience as well. But back to my sort of history. 1986, I graduated from McGill. 1988, I graduated from Cornell University with an MBA in finance and came back to Canada. And I my first job was working for the Royal Bank of Canada, which was at the time and still is Canada's largest financial institution. And the banking systems in Canada and the US are extremely different. That's an important thing that's when I went to Cornell, there were 14,000 banks in the United States. Okay. Most of them were like the small Clinton County Community Trust and all these things, right? Cornell Student Union had a bank. In Canada, there's only 7 banks coast to coast, 7. And this is our banking system is nationwide, whereas in the US, you guys had interstate banking restrictions and everything like that. So you need to understand that. And this was back in 1988 or 1986 to 88. This was something that was crazy for me. Like I was used to be able to travel across Canada with a bank card, and I could just go to a Royal Bank of Canada teller, any province, any town. Whereas one time I was traveling in the US, my buddy was getting married in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia. So I drove down from Canada. I had my Cornell Interact card, but it didn't work anywhere. I didn't realize this. Like I just assumed it would work everywhere in the US, and I ended up running out of money after the wedding. I went back up the coast. I actually went to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I wound around coming up the coast, and I was going to meet a buddy in Washington, and I call him up and there's no answer. And I'm like, I had run out of money on my credit card and I couldn't use my bank card, and because it wouldn't function. And literally I had to sleep in the right on the other side of the Pentagon. I think it's called Crystal City, Virginia. I had to sleep in a rest area because I only had literally half a tank of gas to get back to Ithaca, New York. Okay. So this is just an idea of how the different banking system was work and how you sometimes get into trouble doing different things. Anyway, okay, that's an aside. I came back to work in Canada, worked for Royal Bank of Canada, Canada's largest financial institution. And I was working directly for the chief financial officer on very specific projects. Mergers and acquisitions were some of the ideas, but one of the first projects I was assigned was to work to reprice the Royal Bank of Canada's Latin American debt portfolio. Okay. Royal Bank of Canada had made billions of dollars of loans to lesser developed countries around the world. Most of the exposure was to Latin American countries like Brazil and Mexico and Argentina, all of which had defaulted because the loans were in US dollars and there was a currency collapse, their domestic currency. So they couldn't actually pay back the US dollar loan. So they all defaulted. The banks, and I say the banks because this same situation at Royal Bank of Canada was reflected in all the US money center banks too. Okay. When I say a money center bank in the US, I mean the big banks, the JP Morgans of the world, the Chase Manhattans of the world. Chase Manhattan was separate from JP Morgan until their merger, but in 1988 it was a separate bank. Manufacturers Hanover. Anyway, all the banks were in the same situation, Joshua, that they had made these loans to lesser developed countries, and the country stopped paying. And this was a huge problem for the financial system because Royal Bank of Canada was insolvent, which meant that if you had written those loans down to the market price that those loans were trading at, which was about 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
That 75 cents on the dollar loss that you would have to take on those loans would have used up the book value of equity of the bank. In other words, the bank was insolvent. Okay. This is pretty eye-opening for a kid that comes out of university and then says this is how the banking system works. I mean, this happens and nobody knows. And the reality was that the Royal Bank of Canada was no different than the money center banks in the US. And so Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady in 1988 proposed a plan where they would change or restructure the loans from a 5-year loan into a 30-year loan. And in doing so, they would secure the principal of the loan at, it was about 15 cents on the dollar. Of the 25 cents on the dollar where it was trading, 15 cents of the dollar would be secured by US Treasury zero coupon bonds that over the 30-year period would accrete back to 100 cents on the dollar. That's how a zero coupon bond works. It was a brilliant solution. It was financial gimmickry to pretend that these loans, and by the way, the banks, according to accounting rules, would not have to write them down to the 25 cents on the dollar. Okay. It was, yeah, wash your hands, little bit of goofiness, but it opened my eyes. And I just asked the question, like, if this, this is how, as a depositor, do you have confidence putting your money into a bank if the bank can regularly become insolvent? And the answer is because there's a de facto implied backstop by the government that the banks are too big to fail. Okay. And what does that mean? Well, essentially, it means they could print money. And it's true. Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen since 1988 the fact that they do print money, and they do print a lot of it. But in 1988, I started asking myself, what is this? What is this fiat Ponzi? And I accepted the fact that it is an ability to print money. But when you have that ability to print money, you debase the existing currency that's outstanding. And I said, this is a fact of life in the capitalist system. But that was my first exposure. So I became a credit trader. And for the last 30 years, I've been trading credit, all shapes and sizes. So high yield bonds was my focus, but I've traded credit default swaps. I've traded mortgages. I've traded treasuries. I've traded structured product. Let's just say I've traded pretty well the whole gamut of credit products out there, on both the sell side, which meant I worked for an investment dealer, and the buy side. My two most recent jobs were working in the hedge fund world. And we successfully, my last hedge fund job, we successfully navigated the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009. And we completed, thank you, bud. Thank you. Yeah, and we did quite well. And I said, that's it. In 2016, I'm hanging it up. I'm going to trade still, but I'll just do it for my own account. I don't want to manage money on behalf of clients. It's a difficult business. It's, there's three levels of priority. It's easiest to lose your own money. Now, it's never fun, but it's easiest to lose your own money. You only have to be accountable to yourself. It's second easiest to lose a bank's money, because then you just have to be accountable to them. Like, yeah, okay, like I was a knucklehead and you hired a dumb trader, but that's your fault, not mine. But then when you're managing client money, that's really difficult, all right? Especially if it's friends and family money. Anyway, we had completed a really quite a outstanding trade. And it came to it all paid off in 2016. And I put my hand up and I said, I'm done. I want to go out and do something else. I wasn't quite sure what else I wanted to do, but as everything happens, I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2016, and I'm like, dang, this is the solution that I was looking to in 1988. So, at the time, 28 years earlier, I was looking for this solution. It wasn't gold for me. And then I initially I was skeptical, like everyone is. Oh, it's the Ponzi, it's a greater fool theory. Well, anyone who says stuff like that has not done the research. They're intellectually lazy, or they are biased. Okay, they work for a gold company or a gold. They manage gold as an asset class. So think who that could be. Or they work in a banking system and they know they could be very well disintermediated by this beautiful technology called Bitcoin. It's the coolest engineering technology I've seen in the financial markets in my 30 plus years. And I'll state at this point, it's the best trade I have ever seen on a asymmetric return basis. Okay. And this is 30 years of experience. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I tend to make more right decisions than wrong, because if I did make more wrong decisions than right, I wouldn't have survived. Right. I mean, it's just, that's the way the market weeds out those people that can manage risk versus those that are stuck in their own, they become stuck in their own silo. So that's what I've done 30 years plus. Well, I was married. So 31 years, this is I was trading 4 years before I got married. So I guess I'm close to 35 years trading these financial instruments.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thanks for breaking that down. Just going through that so fluidly. I'm sure you've been on a lot of podcasts and shows and speaking. I have so many questions.
Sure.
I guess during that time in '88, you're like, what the heck's going on? And you knew that something was wrong. What was that experience like? Like joining trading desks, going through trading
Yeah.
all these different products. Could you sleep at night? What was it like talking to other people as well? Like, was it just like, oh, I just got to get it done? I'm sure you liked trading. So
I love your question. You know what's so cool is because no one's ever asked me it that clearly, and I've always been shy to answer the truth because I wanted to protect. Firstly, you come out of school, you have a bunch of school debt, and you're not looking to blow up the institution that you're working for because you have a job. But here's the truth, and I'm going to tell you because I don't lie. First of all, the financial analysts, the equity analysts that were analyzing all these bank stocks, they had no clue. It was just so embarrassing. So I go to our CFO and I go, and his name was Emil, and I go, Emil, we have a big problem. And he goes, I know, don't tell anybody. I'm like, what? This is the truth? This is how we deal with these problems. Don't tell anybody because the people are just so stupid. They're not going to figure it out themselves. Well, listen, I didn't want to cause a bank run. I didn't want to, wave the white flag that, hey, I've just been hired by the Royal Bank of Canada.
Whistleblower.
And that's it. Let's go blow it out of the water. Right, Josh? So, I mean, I'm just like, so I didn't say anything. But that being said, like the Royal Bank of Canada, again, was no different from any other money center bank. Everybody was in the same situation. So, what are you going to do? You're going to bring down the capitalist system. Some stupid kid from, 2 years out of MBA, just because no one would have believed it, right? Like you'd get the Paul Krugmans and all these other guys. Oh, what does he know? The fax machine, like so there was no upside for me to blow the whistle. Like I wasn't blowing a whistle on anything. It's just that is the reality. And Henry Ford said about over 100 years ago, or right about 100 years ago, he said, if the common American understood,
be blood on the streets.
Boy, he said there'd be a revolution overnight. If they understood how the banking system worked, right? There'd be a revolution overnight, and rightly so. Like it's pretty damn, excuse my language, pretty darn scary, right? And okay, it is what it is. So what was my first thing? Well, I told the CFO and he told me not to tell anybody. I told my wife and she just said, okay, here's dinner, like it doesn't mean anything, and then I don't go to my buddies and I'm not like, take all your money out of the banks. Like, what are you going to do with it? Like, and there wasn't an alternative, right? You could put it in gold, but even gold then was very difficult there were no gold ETFs right around that time. It was all like, oh, you want to own gold? Well, I remember one guy on a trading floor. This is the honest truth. This had nothing to do with a financial crisis. He actually walked into the trading floor with like 4 bars of gold in his knapsack because he was this guy that's just said, I need to own gold. But think of that. You walk into a trading floor, and I don't know how much an ounce of gold was at that time, but this was a bar of gold. He might have been carrying around a couple of $100,000 worth of gold in his backpack. This is what it was, because I know you told me, I can't remember how old oh yeah, you told me you're 29. Listen, I graduated in 1986 in engineering, and I had never used a personal computer. Wow. Because they didn't exist. Yeah. They didn't exist. Now in the iPhone that you have in your hand, there's more power in that iPhone than put 2 men on the moon in 1967. Okay. You got to think about this, about what it means to the world. And 1967 was only 20 years earlier than when I graduated from university. And now 30 years later than that, this is when things have gone parabolic in terms of adoption of digital social platforms, etc. And this is why Bitcoin is now, it's certainly not a household term, but it is not as crazy as if you had tried to introduce Bitcoin in 1988. It wouldn't have worked because no one had an iPhone to store it on. They carried bars of gold around in their knapsack. It's crazy but true, man. It's crazy but true.
That's great historical perspective. Just the whole thing. This is awesome. What This is great. What what if you can explain Bitcoin to someone your age, right?
Okay.
How would you explain it in a couple of sentences?
Awesome question again. I'm an engineer. I'm pretty simple. So a lot of people say digital gold. They explain it as digital gold, and I think that might be a narrative. But if I'm talking to an engineer and the narrative that strikes me, and I got this from Michael Saylor, is that Bitcoin is digital energy. Okay, it's all the first law of thermodynamics. It's conservation of energy. And when you take natural resource energy out of the ground and you create electricity and then you mine Bitcoin, like, to me, that's exactly what Bitcoin is. Digital energy. It's the purest form of monetary energy ever created by man. It's capped at 21 million. So that's extremely important. Okay. So there's scarcity. It's transferable, divisible, portable, all these things. Imagine this poor guy literally carrying, and his name, and I'm going to tell you, his nickname was Woody. I won't tell you exactly what his name was, but he played professional football. He played professional football in Canada in the CFL, which isn't a bad football league. It's not the NFL, but there's some really talented. So this guy wasn't, he didn't just fall off the turnip truck, but he had 4 bars of gold in his knapsack and he was sweating. He's coming in and he's sweating. And I'm like, Woody, what are you doing? I'm really worried about so this was probably, when that happened, that was probably 1990. I'm going to put a time on it, 1997. Okay, just right around. But Woody comes in and he's sweating. He's carrying these things. Well, if Bitcoin was there, he wouldn't have to. It's portable, transferable, divisible. The most important part about Bitcoin is the blockchain. You need to look at it. You need to see it in action. So long answer to your story. It's digital energy. And if you want to see how it works, go to tradeblock.com and watch the blockchain in action forming. And you look at it as an engineer. I'm like, wait a minute. This is real. Like, you see these hashes flashing across the screen and you're like, okay, there goes like a $40 transaction. So what is it? It's like maybe a meal. And there's some of them are smaller. You go, oh, that's a cup of coffee. Not quite that small, but $5. And then you see like $100,000 flash across. Then you're like, whoa, okay, 100,000. And then you're like a couple of $1 million flash across. And you're like, what is this? This is actually a living, breathing organism. And it's decentralized. No one controls it. I can send money anywhere in the world, and I have done this. I've sent money to New Zealand, to an indigenous tribe in New Zealand. It settled in 10 minutes. And if I had tried to do the same thing with the international banking system and international wire transfers,
2 weeks.
I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, Joshua, but it is an absolutely, I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. Okay. You'd think that you're sending their money, not your own money, but all this KYC, anti-money laundering stuff that they make you go through, SWIFT transactions. And by the way, if you get the address wrong on the bank that you're sending it to, that's your problem. And it can go into this sort of vaporware, and you lose your international wire transfer. It's crazy. And except the alternative, you have Bitcoin, bang, 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 done in 10 minutes. So beautiful.
Yeah. You don't need to remember the addresses.
You need the one address that you're sending it to, and that's all good.
All you need. Yeah.
Yeah. The alphanumeric address. Yeah.
We paid.
Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. That's lovely. Cool. So like when we went through 2016 and you were just like, oh my gosh, this is it. Talk about 2016 to now.
So great question. Thank you. Then, by the way, for your audience, or let's just say it's you and me and maybe your family will listen to this. Okay. So, but this was not scripted. These are great questions. You're a smart reporter, not even reporter, but like, you know what I mean? You're doing your due diligence. So what did I know? I know that every single day since 2016, I've been absolutely enamored with this brilliant technology. And it's not a stretch to say I learned something new almost every week about Bitcoin that I didn't know before. And that's the truth. So it is a incredibly deep journey that you need to go on. It's the technology is just so cool. The thought process, this thing I'll throw out, this difficulty adjustment factor in the mining of Bitcoin is one of the most brilliant additions to cryptography that I have ever seen. And I'm not a cryptographer. I am an engineer, but this mining adjustment to allow for the efficient protection of the network, if you will, is just so brilliant. You're like, how did they think about this in 2009, right? Like, how is it possible that someone had the foresight to plan this network out? Well, yet they did. I often say I wouldn't be surprised if someday they figured out that Satoshi came down from Mars, right? Like, I just don't know. I'm not saying that, but like, this is something that's so brilliant, and it addresses so many different problems in the system, and it works so well. Like, it just works so well. Remember, this was designed in 2009, and it still has never been hacked. It's also just grown like they said it would. It uses proof of work, which is a very necessary component to protect the network. It's the strongest computer system in the world, and it's only getting stronger. There's 150 million owners of Bitcoin, and it's growing at 2 million users per week. Okay, and I was down in Miami. I was on stage. I was speaking with I was speaking with 3 other guys as well as a moderator. One of them is another Canadian by the name of Jeff Booth. I want to, pardon me?
I read his book.
That book is one of the best books I've ever read, Josh. In fact, I think it could be the best.
Hands. That book needs to be in everyone's hands.
So I'm going to make the intro to you. I'd love you to get him on your podcast. I mean, that guy is so nice. And he's so smart. And the neat thing about Jeff is a lot of his research, I have written a paper myself, and I based it on a lot of my own research. I had never read his book or heard of him. And then I go through his book when someone introduced it to me, and I'm like, wow, this confirms a lot of the same mathematics that I took numbers from the Institute of International Finance, for example. He took statistics from there. And I'm like, Jeff, this is so remarkable. So anyway, I'm on stage with him in Miami, as well as Preston Pish and Mark Yusko. And we're giving this speech, or not speech. We had 30 minutes, and each of us said a little bit of, our 2 cents. And I had met a bunch of kids from Guatemala the day before, and they seeked me out, and they said, Greg, we'd love to meet you down in Miami. I'm like, sure, guys, come and meet me. And I thought I'd be meeting 1 or 2 of them. It turns out I met like 15 or 16 of them, and I took a group picture with them, and they were telling me what they wanted to do in Guatemala. They wanted to do the same thing that was happening in El Salvador. And in El Salvador, it was called Bitcoin Beach. Well, they wanted to do the same thing in Guatemala, and based around a lake in Guatemala called Lake Atatila. And they wanted to call it Bitcoin Lake, and essentially create an ecosystem in Guatemala, like the ecosystem around Bitcoin Beach. Well, lo and behold, I had no idea that Jock Mallers was going to make that announcement later in the day, that he signed up a country, right, called El Salvador, based on Bitcoin Beach. Well, look, I'm just so pumped that I know these kids that are trying to do the same thing in Guatemala. I called them out on stage. I wanted everybody in the audience to say, this is a use case of Bitcoin. It's changing people's lives. It's the privileged countries. Like, I love the United States, I love Canada, but let's be honest, okay? Most of the world is nowhere near as privileged as our 2 nations, and that's what Bitcoin helps, okay? Anyway, I called them out on stage. There was hoots and hollers for way in the back. A couple of them were in the audience. And then, though, later that afternoon, Jack Mallers makes that announcement, and I'm like, wow. And this just accelerated, okay? Because now there's other countries. I'm talking to some fairly high up ministers of various countries around the world, not because I know anything, except that they just think that some of the talks I've given or whatever adds value. So here's the thing that I want to leave you with. Jeff Booth's book is brilliant. I'd love for him to get on your podcast. Perhaps someday, maybe the 2 of us will go on your podcast, because what do I love to do? I love to help people understand what I think is the most important opportunity of my generation transferring to the younger kids. I'm not proud of the fact that my generation may in fact be the most selfish generation that's ever lived on the planet, pulling forward all of the future earnings to live in the present to the benefit of my knucklehead people that can't even balance a budget. Okay, and that's a direct pitch against our stupid prime minister in Canada, Justin Trudeau, that said budgets balance themselves. Okay, Justin, look, man, they don't balance themselves. And if you had actually said that as the CEO of a company, your stock would be shorted to zero and you'd be kicked out as a CEO. But this is what we're left with. And I'm just trying to show the counter narrative. It's not like that. It's about credit markets. It's about confidence in the people that are leading it. And Jeff Booth is on the same page. So yeah, listen, happy to make that introduction to your audience. Yes, I will. I'm not blowing smoke. The Price of Tomorrow, written by Jeff Booth, is the best book I've ever read. Okay. And I've read some really good books, but none of them were quite as complete in the thought process as Jeff presents.
Yeah, that's great. Man, yeah, we'll all three of us will get on and nerd out on that book. And I just appreciate you for breaking down your story and just Bitcoin and just this revolution. And I don't tell people that this isn't an asset class. This is a universe that's being created, and this is the technology that we're about to see. And that's why Break Into the Future exists, because what we're about to go into is bigger than, it's going to change the world. Like,
Josh, I just had a crazy thought. I think I've seen you speak before. Do you take your thing to your track when you're trading and talk into your iPhone and talk about this stuff? Is that you, or is it someone else I'm thinking of?
probably isn't me, but
It wasn't you, eh? So you've never gone to your because you told me you ran track. So I remember this guy who would talk on the way to his workouts and just talk into the phone and talk about brilliant stuff like you're talking about right there. And it just struck me as and look, I'm not, but he was a track runner. He was black. It was, yeah, it could have been you. Like, you look at me and, oh, there's another white guy. It could have been Foss, but it wasn't. The point is, he was saying the same beautiful stuff you were just saying.
Hey, maybe it was. I'm not sure. I mean, I do still run. I'm active. I'm running training for marathons right now. So,
oh, you are? Wow.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just what the conversation we're having, for no matter what color creed you are, like,
oh no, exactly.
People in Africa, Latin America, everywhere, right? In America, Canada, wherever. I think that's the great thing about Bitcoin, and whoever Satoshi is, we could talk about that. But like, it's lowering the financial rails and opportunity for everyone, right?
Egalitarian.
Yes.
Everyone has the same opportunity. This is not your elitist. It's not dictated by the elitists. It's not the Cantillon effect that benefits those top few percentile of the population. What is it? Just around 45% of the US population has no investments. Yet, what has this asset inflation policy by the US accomplished? Well, it's inflated asset values in housing, it's inflated real estate. But who does it penalize? It penalizes the people that don't have that those investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like exposure, education. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about on Breaking Into the Future, and that's why, like, our focus is blockchain and crypto.
Okay.
I think it's just so many things that I think all things are being revealed. The knowledge is increasing, and the marginalized communities will rise, and are right.
The options are there, right? And let's talk about great people like Russell Okung. Okay, the reality is the guy is smart as the day is long, and he's vocal about taking his pay from the NFL as Bitcoin. He is a monster of a man in more ways than one. Okay. But he is a monster physically, but he's also a monster in terms of a presence. This is what makes me excited. Because why? The system has always benefited the top few percent, and I'm not going to say that I've ever been close to being underprivileged by any means, but I like to work hard, and people that work hard tend to get lucky. That's an expression, you get lucky, you work hard, you get lucky. What I hate is people that expect to be entitled for benefits that they've never worked for. I hate it because it's not sustainable in the long term. I don't hate the people for it. I hate the people that promote it as an option. So, it's so deep, and it runs so deep. I had my grandfather fought in both world wars. He was a fighter ace. He was awarded the Order of the British Empire. That's a very prestigious medal that very few, there's only 800 citizens outside of Great Britain that have been awarded it. And he didn't fight these wars for people just to assume that, you get everything for free, right? That's what he was fighting against. And his government told him to fight against it, but much like the Nazis, the government told those soldiers to fight for fascism. At the end of the day, my granddad 100% believed in capitalism and the right for everybody to get an even, everyone has the same chance, right? Gets the fair chance. And I'm not saying the soldiers for Germany, by the way, believed in fascism. I think that a lot of them were indoctrinated in that. And I don't want to get too off path here, but there's a crazy, not a crazy smart author in Canada called Jordan Peterson, who basically made that same statement. He said, don't even for 1 second believe that you would have risen up against Nazi Germany. If you were a citizen of Nazi Germany, you were either so scared or so indoctrinated that that was the right way to do things, that you didn't question it when they sent you to war to fight for this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So they say that you're, we're interning a bunch of Jewish compatriots, but that's fine. The government says it's fine. And this is what happens. It's slowly, it's drip, 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 until all of a sudden you realize I'm a robot. Yeah. So I sort of ventured off of the path. The point is this, look, I want you guys, when I say you guys, I mean you 29-year-old kids who have been handed, a bag of hammers. You've been handed a bag of hammers from my generation, because we're a very selfish generation where we've pulled everything forward. And I want to help try and fix that to an extent.
Yeah. I love it. That's what we need to do. I think every generation just tries to say, hey, this new kids. It's like, no, there's always going to be new kids on the block. Mm-hmm. It's just the circle of life. And so how do we work together, knowing that, hey, you were in my shoes one day. One time ago, and I'll be in your shoes, right? Double my lifespan, right? And so let's work together and just, help.
And I still hope I have 1/3 of my life left. Okay. Like I probably don't, but let's just assume maybe I do, because I guess I knock on wood, I think that I hope that I'll be able to contribute over the next few years and help out,
You will see your grandkids and all that stuff. Yeah, I think this is amazing first episode, and just the history lesson you're giving. I think for the audience, for the viewers that aren't even here yet, but they're coming in.
I'm good with that.
Is just to understand the fundamentals, right? We're starting off, we're crypto baby. We want to lead people to be crypto wizards, maybe even legends like yourself. I think we could say you're in the legend category.
You're too kind. I'm in the experienced category. Okay. I'm certainly not experienced with crypto, and I will be honest, I'm a Bitcoin maxi by and large. But that being said, it's all good. You got to do your own research. My rationale for being involved in Bitcoin is very simple. It is the best store of value ever created by mankind. Think of it this way. Fiat, I don't want fiat to fail, but it's on its way to failing, certainly in a lot of countries. Venezuela, just recently, Turkey's in bad shape. Fiat regularly fails. Don't store your money in fiat ladies and gentlemen, because if you store your money in fiat, it's guaranteed to lose value over time. That's called debasing. It's a mathematical certainty, okay, that it will lose value because of the printing that's required just to maintain the debt maintenance, because we've incurred so much debt. The fiat currency, you don't want it to fail, because why? It's good for certain things like international trade. It's good for facilitating consumption. Well, good if you consume a lot, meaning, you know, you go out and you buy a new waterbed. You don't need to pay with some of your, let's say you were a hammer manufacturer, you don't have to take hammers to pay for a waterbed. You just pay currency, right? That's what a fiat currency is good for.
Yeah.
But don't store your money in it. Excuse me, your value in it. Store your value in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's like your savings account, fixed supply, 21 million forever and ever. I think it's extremely cheap at these prices. You don't have to own one Bitcoin. Don't think of it as, oh, I got to get it when it's $40,000 a Bitcoin. I think it could go to prices that are so extremely high, much higher than 40,000. It's a rounding error, this price. And again, you don't have to buy one full Bitcoin. You buy $100 a week, you take from your checking account and you put it into your savings account called Bitcoin.
Yeah. Wow. That's it. That's it. That's it. Why are you, now's a great way to help people understand the fractional, they can get fractional pieces of Bitcoin, and they could open up their wallets on Coinbase, which is just the biggest exchange today. But there's several ones like crypto.com, Uphold, Gemini. There's so many exchanges. Binance, which is a little crazy, but they're good. They're doing good things, crazy things, but they're doing good things. And so we'll get into that another time. But I want to get into, why are you a Bitcoin maxi, and what do you think about that with Ethereum?
I need to be clear. Okay. I don't want to diss anything out there. How about this? I have a small brain and I'm only able to process everything I've learned about Bitcoin. I need to be a Bitcoin expert before I even go anywhere further. But I'll tell you this. This is what Bitcoin is to me. It's decentralized.
True. Yeah.
And there is an argument that Ethereum, which was invented by another Canadian, Vitalik, is not nearly decentralized despite their claims. Okay. And when you move to proof of stake versus proof of work, which Ethereum will do, it'll become less less decentralized. Plus there's no fixed supply in Ethereum. Vitalik doesn't even know what the true supply of Ethereum is. Okay. And it could change anytime. So this is all a big problem to me that was looking for a solution that had fixed supply. It's designed, Bitcoin is designed as a monetary layer. And in the future, you can build these other applications on top of it. But Ethereum is an app in my mind, okay? And I understand smart contracts, if this, then that, that's all good. But I was looking for something different. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm not saying that DeFi is not a real thing. I'm just thinking over time that there's a potential that all of those applications can eventually be built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain with more decentralization. And that's what I look for.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. It's awesome. So, okay, guys, we got Bitcoin, Ethereum are your players, the biggest networks in the world for cryptocurrency, right? What the cryptocurrency, what these blockchains are really just the value is shifting from your .coms, from Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix, whatever .com. It's shifting to www, HTTP, these addresses, right? The creators of the web did not get any money from it. Now, Vitalik, Chris, Charles, Hodgson, right? All these people, whoever Satoshi, he has like tons of Bitcoin. We don't know who, or they, or he, or she, or they.
What if they don't actually though? What if, like, we know this is the Satoshi block, we know that, but what if the reason he disappeared is the most brilliant part of the whole system? Because there is no CEO of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's a CEO of Ethereum. And what does CEO mean? Well, it means chief executive officer, but it also implies a degree of control or a degree of centralization. Okay.
That gives me a lot of perspective.
That being said, I need to be careful here. I don't want people not to own Ethereum, but the reality is most people need to figure out what Bitcoin is before they jump down the rabbit holes of Ethereum and then go off the reservation and talk doggy coin or doji coin, whatever you want to talk. All right. Like you got to understand the principles, the first principles that Bitcoin was created for. And it takes time for it to get to layer 2, but Jack Mallers' Strike is just a beautiful working, breathing organism that allows countries to adopt Bitcoin now. Okay. Because
I want to talk to him.
Listen, if you're ever able to talk to him, you make sure that you tell the world, because that guy could be the next president of the United States, in my opinion. I swear to you, I've never been more impressed.
20?
I don't even know, but all I know is, like, I'm pretty sure my son is older than he is, and my son is 26. All right. And to see him on stage, and you guys got to look at his announcement where he was crying because he cares so much about what he's doing in El Salvador. And he's such an honorable kid, calling out his old prep school he did on stage. I can't remember, but he goes, when my buddy from prep school is drinking a $35 Manhattan, that spoiled effing rich kid sort of thing. Like, I just loved it. I'm like, man, oh man. And then he's so emotional about Strike and what it's allowing the people in El Salvador to do. And look, I swear, this COVID thing has been a crisis on so many levels, but where do I see strength? My God, in kids like you, like him, like these kids from Guatemala that I met, that are really trying to do something to change the world. Because why? Because we need to change, okay? It can't continue like this. It's only mathematics. It cannot continue like this.
The global debt bubble is not, it's a wrap. Rome. It's just
That's it.
It's a global Rome. And it's time for all things made new. So this is awesome. This is so cool. Yeah, I love that. Like, guys, just understanding these base layers of the new internet and Bitcoin. Do you see Bitcoin being that world reserve currency where they're like, okay, the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, saying, hey, SWIFT has to be done. I don't know what we're going to do with China, and they've been making their bank, the bank where they have all those countries on it. They've been doing that since I was in college, because I was in the weeds following everything. What do you think about Bitcoin?
What a great question. What a great question.
Yeah, Bitcoin actually being, they say, dang, they actually have to say there, because they're trying to build their third layer right now. Bitcoin actually has to be the layer where, hey, people across the world are transacting in Bitcoin, but it's a fixed supply. So how does that?
So great question. So here's the thing. And you know, how you asked me how I describe Bitcoin, and some people describe it as digital gold. For me, it's digital energy. But think about this, Josh, and by the way, is it okay if I called you Josh, or do you prefer Joshua?
I like Josh. I like the fullness of the power.
Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay, Joshua. Okay, so Joshua. So here's what you got. You have energy companies around the world and countries around the world, like Russia, who's no friend of the United States, that has up until now received payment of their oil and natural resources in US dollars. And why is that? Well, basically, there was a petrodollar agreement between the USA and Saudi Arabia that said that in turn, if you accept and price oil in Saudi Arabia in US dollars, we will protect you. We will, there's the Shiites and all the historical cultural differences are in the world in the Middle East. But the US basically said, okay, look, we'll protect you. And that was called the petrodollar agreement. And oil has been priced in US dollars. Well, it's my contention that since Bitcoin is digital energy, and since Russia is no friend of the US, and they've actually been trying to get their oil priced in euro dollars more and more, wouldn't it make more sense for Russia to accept payment for their natural resource energy in digital energy called Bitcoin? And when that happens, and I believe that will happen within the next decade, Bitcoin will become the de facto reserve asset of the world, not reserve currency, just the reserve asset, which means that central banks, much bigger than El Salvador, will hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets as a reserve asset. It's not going to supplant the US dollar as reserve currency. And in fact, it may be beneficial for the US dollar as a currency or a checking account versus a savings account.
Will be backed by the Bitcoin because you always have a strong balance sheet. If you
could be, look, I mean, there's a lot of wood to chop to get there. I'm just saying that the natural evolution as an engineer for me is when energy becomes priced in digital energy. Tit for tat. It's pretty simple. And there's certainly countries out there that would like to see that happen. I'm pointing at Russia, but there's lots of other countries that would say the same, including perhaps Saudi Arabia at this point, but I'm not going to put any words in anybody's mouth. The reality is there's a province in Canada called Alberta that if they took, and they're very energy, they have incredible energy resources. Did you know there's more oil in Alberta, oil reserves in Alberta than in Saudi Arabia? They just happen to be heavy oil. They happen to be tar sands. But there's more oil in Alberta than in Saudi Arabia.
Wow. How is
My God, do you think that it wouldn't be smart for some of those people? And tar sands, by the way, is not the environmental catastrophe that a lot of the people make it out to be. Heavy oil goes into making things like asphalt. Okay, it can also be refined into higher grade petroleum products. But the point is very simple. If Alberta started embracing Bitcoin, and I'm a Canadian, so I wouldn't mind this to happen because it would make our country smarter, or maybe make us smarter, but it would also make us more competitive. I would love to see Alberta become a center of Bitcoin adoption within Canada, and the energy patch would be hugely benefited by this because we've been dealt a few gut punches when Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, that's a big punch in the gut. But what does Trudeau do? Well, okay, you're my buddy, so I'm not going to say anything. Okay, let's go out back and we'll just we'll toast our friendship and our elitist, privileged lives that we've led.
It's a lot of jobs, that could have been that.
Oh, listen, it's crazy. Energy, every single advancement in human productivity is accompanied by an advancement in the technology of the energy. Mm-hmm. We have done some things that I question in the name of environmental protection. I'll just say this. Did you know that in one volcano, the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by one volcano over a 4-day period is larger than all the carbon dioxide that's produced by humans in the world in 4 days in one volcano? And we have hundreds, and if not thousands, of active volcanoes
on a yearly
around the world.
Basis.
That's correct. It's one volcano produces as much carbon dioxide as all the human and fossil fuels that we're burning, and they do it in 4 days. And it takes a year for us to do it. And that's one volcano. Like this whole thing about controlling carbon dioxide, you can't, okay? Yeah. The world needs carbon dioxide.
Yeah, so we could go back and forth.
It's what makes trees produce oxygen, right? It takes, the whole thing, photosynthesis and all this. I don't need to rewrite the chemistry equation for all your listeners. This is just a bunch of ESG FUD. I'm a capitalist with a heart. I like helping the environment when it needs to be helped. I don't like dumping plastics in the ocean. I don't like dumping oil in the sewers. But I'll tell you what, trying to control carbon dioxide is like holding your finger in a dike It's impossible to stop. Okay. You want to stop carbon dioxide, go stop volcanoes from emitting it. And then the other thing is you want to stop ozone, stop cows from farting. Okay. Because the greatest destructor of ozone is actually all the cows that McDonald's uses in South America for their beef patties. They create more methane and ozone destruction from their cows than humans do.
Yeah.
Crazy, true, factual. Look it up on Beyond Beef or Beyond Meat, rather. That was part of their presentation. These are factual statements that never get exposed because there's other agendas out there.
I didn't know that McDonald's had real patties.
Oh yeah, they're real. They need cows. Like they have the fake patties, right? But they have the
plastic.
Well, that's fair. You know, you got to read that Ray Kroc story about, you know, if you believe that their milkshakes actually had any milk in them. At one point they didn't. I think they do now. But you remember they were only called shakes. They were never called milk shakes. And the reason they were called shakes is because they were almost entirely a petroleum byproduct or something like that. I look, I don't want to. I love McDonald's. I mean, look, who doesn't love McDonald's? But at the end of the day, you know.
Those fries are great, man.
Yeah, oh yeah. And they used to be not even real potatoes, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but let's stick on things that I do know. Bitcoin. Look, I need you to continue to do what you're doing. Why? Because firstly, you're really, really smart. You've done some really cool research. You've asked me some very pertinent questions. I could go on and on and on. I don't want to bore people. I've written. Well, that could happen for sure, but you need to get a few other really smart people on before you bring me back to dumb it down, okay? But I've written a paper where I used my experience for 30 years of credit trading to evaluate the price of Bitcoin as an intrinsic value. And I'm a firm believer that today, Bitcoin is worth $150,000 a Bitcoin based on credit default swap spreads of sovereign nations. Very simply, it's default insurance on a basket of fiat currencies, okay? And based on open market rates, I believe it to be worth at least $150,000 today. Now that price, it's a dynamic calculation. It'll go up and down as credit spreads change. But the point is, if it's trading at 40,000 and you think it could trade and you think it's worth 150,000, you're supposed to buy it, right? The even better thing though, Josh, and I don't want people to go out and think that, you know, that this is a prediction with 100% certainty. I think Bitcoin could be worth over 2 million bucks a Bitcoin. I'm not going to give you a time, but I'll give you a target. And then if you want what it's going to do over time, I say, I won't give you a price, but I'll tell you, I think the number goes up.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Like I remember 4 years ago, you had guys, I forgot, James Altucher.
Altucher, James Altucher, maybe.
One guy, and crazy McAfee. I love that guy. And all these people saying like Bitcoin is going to be 250,000, this is that. And so my question is that nominal gains, real gains? Like, or is that like, okay, the dollar is actually just losing value?
You're killing it, man. You're killing it. So it's a combination of both. Okay, it has to be a combination of both. One of the reasons that you think you're making money on your house is because the reality is the unit of account is going lower. Okay, that's just the debasing. So it's measured in a debasing unit, the US dollar. Because why? Well, it's mathematics. But the same. So hard assets will all experience the same appreciation due to a decline, a perceived appreciation due to the decline of the unit of account. But some of them will actually experience, much like a growth stock, they'll appreciate enhanced appreciation because the business just turns out to be a really good business. Okay. And that's what I think is the story with Bitcoin. It is, again, the best hard asset that's ever been created by man. I believe that Bitcoin, and I'll leave you guys with this in terms of evaluation. Right now, in today's dollars, total global financial assets around the world, global financial assets equal 900 trillion US dollars. Okay, that includes real estate, It includes debt. It includes equities, gold, which is only 10 trillion. So 10 trillion of 900 trillion. It includes currencies. It includes fine art, all sorts of stores of value. 900 trillion US dollars. So would it be crazy to think if Bitcoin does become a global reserve asset, like I mentioned with the energy idea, that that Bitcoin could capture 5% of that 900 trillion? I mean, 5% is not a crazy high number, right? That's pretty low. So 5% of 900 trillion is 45 trillion. Yeah. What's 45 trillion divided by 21 million? It's over $2 million of a coin. Okay, pretty simple. $2 million a coin, and you put a probability on that, Josh. And let's do some statistics because I know you'll get this. How about I throw out this proposal to you? Would you give me, if I give you a 90% chance Bitcoin's worth $0, which I think is crazy. I don't think it'll ever go to zero, but let's just say I'll give you a 90% chance Bitcoin's worth $0. If you give me a 10% chance it's worth $2 million or more. I think that's a trade that most people would say, okay, look, I hate Bitcoin. If you give me 9-to-1 odds that it's worth zero, I'll take that bet. Well, if you do a quick expected value calculation on that binary distribution, 10% times 2 million is $200,000, and 90% times zero is zero. Well, that binary distribution right there is worth, in an expected value calculation, $200,000 of Bitcoin. At least. Aren't you supposed to buy it when it's 40? Are you supposed to? Because I'm just asking. And I think the answer is yes. Do you put all of your money in it? No. But do you put more than zero in it? The answer is yes. Okay. Very simply. And this is what I've done for my whole career, is traded probabilities versus outcomes. Okay. The reality is the price distribution of Bitcoin is a continuous distribution. It's not binary, meaning it only has two outcomes. It's a continuous distribution with an extremely long right-hand tail. That's what's so exciting about it, because 2 million could be low.
What okay. Is the right-hand tail for the viewers?
Say that again.
What is a right-hand tail?
Oh, so a distribution. So if you think of your bell, your typical distribution is what's called a normal distribution, and on it has two sides, right? Well, the reality with Bitcoin is it will never go below zero value. It doesn't have environmental claims against it, and no one can claim it from you anyway. There's no CFO. So CEO, just imagine though that you're bound at zero, but the right-hand tail is the price that it could go to, and the tail is infinite. That's what a continuous distribution is. Even the bell curve has tails that with 99% confidence you get within 3 standard deviations of your mean, but there's a tail on it. Well, this asymmetric tail is so long to the right-hand side, meaning the price is could be so extreme. That's what you want to capture. Exposure to that right-hand side tail. Yeah. Not with 100% certainty, but with greater than 0% certainty. And that's why you get people like gold bugs out there saying, I'm 100% certain Bitcoin's a fraud. No, they cannot be 100% certain. You just can't be. Much like you can't say, I'm 100% certain they will never mine gold out of seawater. No, you can't be certain about that either. There's 20 million pounds of gold in seawater. Do you think there's a chance we figure out how to get that out of seawater? Yeah. And what would that do to the price of gold, or the supply, at least the supply, this 2% per annum supply, somewhat steady supply rate of gold? Well, that might not be the same thing if someone could figure out how to get it out of seawater, right? This is the beautiful things about Bitcoin that people fail to appreciate. So many of the parameters are fixed. They're math and code. Those things are certain. Mathematics and code. Okay?
Programs. It's programmable money.
Yes, man. That's exactly what it is. And I like to take it one step further. It's programmable digital monetary energy. Okay? Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's it. That's cool. more question.
Go ahead.
What would be a good world to you in terms of Bitcoin and just this revolution, the fourth turning we're going into? What would it look like to you in 10 years that we're on the right path?
Wow. So that's neat. I'm going to have to ask you to clarify. What did you call it? The fourth turning?
Fourth turning. Neil Howe wrote
Okay, I'm not familiar. I've heard the phrase, but it's interesting you bring it up. So hopefully I'm not going to butcher this. I'll assume that all you're asking for is my outlook of what I would love the world to look like.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would love the world to look like the following. The billions of people in the world that are unbanked have a chance to own a store of value that cannot be confiscated by nefarious players like governments. They can own their own future. They can get paid for their hard work and time and energy at time zero and store it in something like Bitcoin that will not be debased or stolen from them via inflation over time. Okay, so that's what Bitcoin does. It's the most beautiful store of value that allows you to store the value of your work or time or energy that you expend today, pounding nails into a roof in the hot sun, like I did when I was 20 years old. I may have earned $40 on those hot summer days, $40 in a day. And that was pretty good payback then. But I guarantee you right now, if I went to use that $40 and I had stored that in fiat currencies over the last 35 years, that $40 may be worth about $15 right now. And there's no way that my sweat equity that I invested back then was only worth $15 in today's dollars. Okay. It was worth way more than that, not to mention the time value and the value of the energy that I put into making that house a better asset. You don't want it stolen from you. So what do I want? I want people that understand mathematics, they understand physics, they understand energy that's all the world is about. We are all energy and we are storing the value of our time and our work in digital energy called Bitcoin. I believe there will be other applications built on layer 2 and layer 3 of Bitcoin. Will they be DeFi, DAUs, all these other things that you bring to the table? Some of them may well be. Okay, it'll disintermediate a whole bunch of players in the world, but that's what makes capitalism great. Creative destruction is what makes capitalism great. Did you know that Kodak, which is based in Rochester, New York, just across the lake from where I live in Toronto, they actually invented the digital camera, eh?
Yeah.
They said, no, we're not going to do this because the world is an analog film. Okay. So they developed a digital camera, but shelved it because they were stuck in their analog world. And they were part of the Dow 30, if I'm not mistaken. If they weren't, they were one of the larger companies in the world. They went bankrupt because they did not adapt. And who developed the digital camera by and large? Oh, this little company that almost was bankrupt in 1988. I was using a Macintosh computer at Cornell University, and I was too dumb to buy the stock of Apple when it was like at $1. Okay. And Apple developed by and large the digital camera. They certainly put it on a platform, and that could have been Eastman Kodak. All I'm saying, Josh, is that the world changes. It's changing more quickly. Don't get stuck in your myopic old school ways. Don't be a Eastman Kodak. Don't be a Peter Schiff. Don't be the people like you can tell that they're conflicted because they don't want this to succeed because it would jeopardize their own elitist positions within either a banking system or Senator Warren, who's, she's got a podium, or, they happen to be the IMF saying this El Salvador's, at risk of losing our funding. Well, that could be the best thing that ever happened to El Salvador, because the IMF has not been a pristine organization for allocating capital. We want a world where true risk is rewarded and true losses are penalized.
Yeah.
If you default, you don't get bailed out, all right? You pay the price. That's what a risk return world is. You don't socialize losses on Wall Street just because you've taken irrational risks. You pay the piper. So that's what I would hope. A long drawn out, but I'm a trader. I've managed risk for over 30 years. I play probabilities. When I'm wrong, I don't go home to my dad. He's not alive anymore, but I don't go on, Dad, I effed it up. Can you bail me out? Like, you don't do that. It's not like there should be no backstops. And that's what I hope that Bitcoin would promote, is the free market capitalism that made the United States, the greatest country in the world. And Canada's not far behind, but if the US doesn't make it, there's no way Canada's making it. Okay. So let's just understand that we are aligned on that front.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say is, like, I think U.S., we're definitely in identity crisis. A lot of other countries too in the world probably is an identity crisis, but especially the U.S., we're plateauing as like the top nation. Some of but I think we're going to hit, if we allow for innovation to take shift with this Web3, we will stay number one. And we're 250 years old, right? We are the greatest human experiment, really putting every nation into one nation. And so I think we just have to put things in the perspective, whether you're Black, you're white, who gives a freak what you are, right? We're really meshing now and trying to understand who we all are together.
Return to your infancy, where you do not see color, right? What are some of the most beautiful things you've ever seen? Or like those commercials that have a 4-year-old white kid and a 4-year-old Black kid, and they run up to each other and they hug each other, and someone says, well, do you know that he doesn't look like you? And they're like, what are you talking about? He doesn't look like me. He's the same height. He's the same. He's bubbly. He's everything. And then someone points out that he has a different color skin. And the kid's like, okay, well, he does. See, that's what happens. You become compartmentalized, right? They place you in different compartments because of religion, because of skin color. Stop all that. Return to your infancy. Return to the fact that language, the base layer of language, is mathematics. Don't separate yourselves because I speak English or Spanish or Chinese or French. We all speak math. Math is the base layer of language.
It doesn't change.
I beg your pardon?
I said, yeah, you're right. Math and science doesn't change.
That's it. It's the same in any language. Okay. This stuff that we've compartmentalized ourselves, it's part of life. It's the human nature to, Jordan Peterson, I think it was Jordan Peterson that talked about these experiments where they had, they arbitrarily assign different groups of kids at camps. And then the point is, look, it's within human nature to want to group yourself in these distinct groups. Well, Bitcoin can change that. It won't fix it. It won't fix it, but it can change it. It can put an egalitarian principle back into the capital markets.
Nice. Well, I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it, and this is awesome. Thanks, Greg. You're a crypto legend. I'm gonna call you a crypto legend.
Well, you're the man. I wish I could. I'll take it's with sincere honor that I've been your first guest. And I really look forward to hearing of your successes. Okay, it's anything I can do to promote your call it a journey, because that's the excitement of it, but also your passion. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm really impressed with your research that you've done to interview me as your first host. So, or excuse me, your first guest, the work you've done to be a gracious host. So it's my pleasure to be here. I will tell you once again, I want nothing more than future generations to benefit from the like-mindedness that we share, and having kids like you out there gives me comfort that we're not as in bad shape as sometimes your gut tells you we are.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to work together and just want just share the show. Definitely want to interview Jeff Booth. That'll be lit.
I'll try my hardest. I'll try my hardest. I know he would do it 100%. He would do it. It's just a question of his time.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've read his book, the fact that you brought up his book is really cool. And I want to thank you
for already. I love it. I read your book in 2 days. I think we're connected on LinkedIn too.
Okay.
Reach out to anybody. Russell, anybody, anybody. I'll talk with anybody.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that Russell Okung has apparently so far decided he doesn't want to do any podcasts, but I'm not going to pull the color card here because we just talked about don't pull the color card, but I'm going to say maybe sometimes you use it to your advantage, right? And you should say, hey, Russ, like we do need you. And by the way, just say to him, hey, Foss would love you to do this. And he'll go, oh, is that the crazy Bond guy in Canada? Because he does know who I am. Yeah. And whether maybe he's forgotten who I am, but he has DM'd me. I will tell you, nothing would make me more happy than you being able to be the link between the smart NFL players that are doing this. I'm not sure of any basketball players that are doing it. I'm trying to do it with hockey players in Canada.
Spencer Dinwiddie with the Brooklyn.
Oh, that's right.
Galaxy. I know like half their team because they just reached out. So I haven't.
So keep doing what you're doing, okay? And let me tell you, I'll do whatever I can from Canada, from this little ribbon of a nation at your northern border. But it's.
I haven't been there. Where are you in Canada?
I'm close to Toronto. I just live on the west side of Toronto. But I tell you what, why don't we? If you ever want to come, we'll go back to my hometown in Montreal. I'm a partner in 8 Irish pubs in Montreal. Maybe I won't have 8 by the time that you come because of this COVID challenge that we've hit. But Montreal is a great town. Toronto's a great town. I would welcome you with open arms, regardless of where we decided to meet. And maybe we'll meet down in Texas someday because the company that I'm partners with now called validuspower.com, where we actually take energy solutions for Bitcoin mining. A lot of our stuff is manufactured in Texas. So there's a good chance I'll be down in your neck of the woods. I know Texas is a big state and it may not be right next door, but maybe that'll be the opportunity. So
for sure. This is awesome. Thanks. Greg.
Okay.
Where can people follow you and keep up with you and all the great stuff?
My Twitter handle, which I've just discovered the power of social media again, because I'm an old fogey. My Twitter handle, which they assigned me, I didn't narcissistically go out and say, I want to be at Foss, Greg Foss, like at Bond, James Bond. They assigned me that handle because I couldn't find anyone that I wanted. But my Twitter handle is at Foss Greg Foss. So FOSSGREG FOSS. And that's about the best way. LinkedIn is fine. Email me. I'll answer any questions I can. I enjoy trying to give an opinion if you haven't seen that, but I have written that paper as well, Joshua, if you want to attach that to any people that want to.
Where's the paper? Where can I find it?
I'll email it to you. Okay. But I have it. I've mentioned it quite a few times on Twitter as well, but I'll email that paper to you and we'll see where we go from there.
Nice. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, man. I really appreciate
it. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for a great time.
You too.
Good luck to you, man. And we'll talk. We'll get Jeff Booth. Okay. Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you from Canada.
Yes, from Texas.
See you, buddy.
Peace. Hey guys, that's Breaking into the Future. Greg Foss, awesome dude. Shout out to Canada. Man, this is gonna be an awesome journey. Hey, you heard him. Let's keep building. Let's keep doing it. To the future we go.